Hi, Tony DeWitt here, Missouri appellate attorney and a guy who likes to make the law make sense on YouTube. Today we're going to talk about something that happened before they actually got to evidence yesterday in the case against Taylor Schabusiness. And I have to confess here, my wife thinks that I'm a geek. I think I'm a nerd. You guys need to help me out with that. What is it, geek or nerd? Just let me know in the comments. But being the kind of geeky, nerdy person that I am, I find things that are interesting in trials that are not necessarily the part of the trial. I wanted to talk for a moment about the motion hearing that went on yesterday at the beginning of the day because it dealt with an evidentiary issue. And one of the things that you become fond of if you are an attorney is a good judge, a judge who will listen to you, and a judge who will give you an opportunity to make your argument. And I think the judge who is doing this trial for Taylor Schabusiness, I think that he is one of those judges. He is a judge that I would be delighted to try a case in front of because he's going to let you make your arguments. He's going to make a ruling, and you may not like it, but you will at least have had the opportunity to put everything in front of him. And in this first little clip, we're talking about a pharmacologist and getting the pharmacologist to testify in that particular case. Now, when an expert is getting ready to testify, the judge has to do this Daubert hearing, and basically he's looking at several things. Is the expert qualified? Does the expert use reliable methods and principles in reaching his results? And is his testimony going to be useful or helpful to the jury? This hearing started with the court asking the prosecution how they felt about this expert testifying. And they complained about a couple of things. One thing they said was, the disclosure was late. And the judge said, ignoring the fact that this disclosure is late, let's look at the substance. And then they went through several things, mostly related to relevance. And then after getting out all of the things that he and the prosecution found wrong with this expert's testimony or proposed testimony, he then asked the defendant where he stood on this.
I understand that, Your Honor. I know that Dr. O'Donnell did meet with my client and got a lot of her history, her drug use history, when he met with her previously. In my opinion, I know that Dr. O'Donnell is a board-certified pharmacologist. He's testified in many trials in Illinois. I believe that he would have the knowledge to indicate that if you use methamphetamine long-term, it could cause chronic brain damage consequences. So, I think it is relevant to the issues as it relates to NGI.
And by NGI, what he means here is not guilty by reason of insanity. In other words, he's saying that it could potentially relate to her incapacity to appreciate the wrongfulness of her conduct at the time that it was occurring. Let's see how the judge thinks about that.
Well, you've gone way beyond my first question. I think you were kind of talking about point 4, Taylor Schabusiness' use of methamphetamine worsened her untreated psychiatric conditions. I was at point 1. The long-term and excessive use of methamphetamine has chronic brain damage consequences. So I want to. You've indicated if he shows up here and testifies, Judge, if you let him testify, he's got 4 opinions. It's right here. Those 4 opinions among them are: number 1, she was acutely intoxicated and impaired by acute methamphetamine use at the time of the alleged asphyxiation. I'm not sure that that's relevant, but we're going to move on to the second piece, which is the long-term and excessive use of methamphetamine has chronic brain damage consequences. And my question is, if I let him launch that out to the jury, is that just a statement that, look, just for anybody, that might be the case? I don't know whether it's true for Ms. Schabusiness or not, but it might be, but it might not be. And the jury is simply left to speculate because we threw something at them, and now they can try to figure out whether that has any relevance for this case. Because the end of that sentence being, she has that there's chronic brain damage consequences, and I haven't heard anybody opine that Ms. Schabusiness has chronic brain damage. And so I don't know how he's going to be able to come in and say, I've reviewed the records. She has chronic brain damage. I'm a pharmacologist. She takes a lot of drugs. Based upon the brain damage that I'm seeing from the reports, because I don't do brain damage, but based upon the reports I see, it was caused by these drugs. I'm not seeing the connection.
What the judge is really saying here is this is not going to be helpful to the jury. They are not going to be able to evaluate her ability to appreciate the wrongfulness of the conduct with this testimony because it's too speculative. It's not directly relevant. He doesn't tie it in to some diagnosed brain injury or brain development issue. Later on in this same area, he talks about the fact that she's been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. But bipolar disorder is not brain damage, and neither is it necessarily directly related to methamphetamine use. So he's got the defense has a real problem here in trying to get this testimony in front of the jury. Now, that was at the beginning of day 2, and at the end of day 3, after the guilty verdict has come in, the court is again indicating to counsel that it's unlikely that he's going to allow him to just speculate willy-nilly about what might be or what could be or what may be. Generally speaking, in order to be probative, in order to have the capacity to prove something, it has to be more likely than not. It has to be probably, not possibly. And I don't believe that this expert can make that showing. And as a result, he is quite likely not to be allowed to testify to the full number of things that he has in his report. So that's what I have for you today. I wish I could do more, but the testimony in this case is just outstandingly bad. There have been some odd people testifying. Their testimony has been halting and difficult to comprehend. In addition to that, the cameras and the recorded statement of the defendant, I think carried a lot of weight with the jury. I think that's why you saw today she was convicted. Now the next step is to try to prove that she is guilty but insane and she couldn't appreciate the wrongfulness of her conduct. And in that regard, they have a huge problem because you have the voluntary intoxication doctrine. And what that means is you can't, as an individual, go out and get drunk, whether it's on alcohol or methamphetamine or marijuana. You can't go out and alter your sensations and then come back and commit a crime and say, well, you know, the devil made me do it, the devil of alcohol or the devil of methamphetamine, because you voluntarily intoxicated yourself. Generally speaking, anything that goes to intoxication, unless it is in there as an aggravating factor, well, it doesn't come in a defensive nature because you shouldn't have been doing the drugs in the first place. In some ways, this is sort of like somebody coming into the courtroom and saying, look, I was abusing drugs. I know drugs are illegal, but I was abusing drugs, and so I'm not responsible for what I did. Gosh, those things are bad. I can see why you guys outlaw them. So it lacks a certain degree of cohesiveness with regard to this particular case. I would say that I think the defense attorney is trying very hard to do a good job for her, and he's just limited by the facts of the case and limited by the fact that his client willingly confessed, even though she could have lawyered up and simply didn't. So that's what I have for you today. Hopefully you found this interesting at the very least, and I hope you will let me know whether you think I'm a geek or a nerd. That'd be very helpful because my wife's always telling me I'm a geek, and I personally think of myself as a nerd. So thanks for watching. Catch me down here at the beach next time. If you like this video, here are a few others you might try, and don't forget to subscribe. Have a terrific day, guys.